Hello, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Matters. We're coming to you on Channel 9 and on WJOPLP Newburyport, FM 96.3. We come out with a new episode on the second Saturday of every month. I'm your co host, Mary Jacobson, and I'm also host of the morning show on Port Media. Each month on Spirit Matters, we'll respond to listener submitted questions or focus our discussion on a special topic. We'll also provide stories of positive change or inspiration because we all need sources of hope. Some weeks we'll have guest respondents as well. Well, let me at this point give a big welcome to my co host. Good morning.
Good morning, Mary. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
We have a special topic for this morning's show, forgiveness. Couldn't be more timely. But before we get to the topic of forgiveness, let's loop back to our closing quote from last month's Spirit Matters. Would you be willing to refresh our memories about that quotation?
Sure. Well, and you may have it exact. I'm not sure that I do, but I do know that it was about holding on to what is essential. So simplifying to make space in our lives and in ourselves for those things that are the most important. Was that right, Mary?
That is absolutely it. And the part I like is at the end, in order to allow the necessary to emerge. Yes. So I want to find out what additional thoughts you may have had about that, but I reflected upon it and I realized that I'm waiting for the necessary to reveal itself. But this quotation prompted me to think about a lot of the unnecessary, extraneous worries and fretfulness that I have that obscures the ability of the necessary to emerge. You know, I have a bad habit of ruminating on what might go wrong. I should have been a lawyer. That's what they get paid for. But usually when I ask myself, what would be the consequence if the thing I'm dreading might happened, it's really pretty minor. It's usually an inconvenience and a transient when it's best for myself or somebody else. Nothing major is usually at stake. But these unnecessary extraneous kinds of worries that I ruminate about create a kind of a white noise in my mind, take up a lot of space. And I think that's what prevents sometimes the necessary from emerging. So that quotation has been a very helpful tool to help me clear a portal into re-entering the present moment, which is, after all, I think the only place where we can really feel alive, or for creativity and what is necessary might emerge. So thank you for that. It's been helpful.
I'm so glad. Yes, you described the monkey mind perfectly well, right? That's exact.
Yes,
and I love this image. I was recently reading Natalie Goldberg, and she's a writer and she writes about writing. And she says that the monkey mind or the worries or just what you're talking about is this little dot in the imagine like the galaxy. It's a little dot and we think that's everything. And yet there's this entire unconscious, creativity, spaciousness that's there beyond that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Absolutely. Yeah.
For me, I realized this month, and I love what you're saying, that, anxiety, we have so much energy in any moment, in any day, in any lifetime. And we get to choose how we employ that, how we use it. And anxiety is absolutely takes our energy, right?
Yeah, totally.
So for me, I realized that a lot of it is about recognizing and realizing that one way is enough and good enough. So what robs me is thinking I need to do more and different and better. And, and that goes from smaller things of, if it's good to have one home cooked meal, then I should probably be making them for the month and freezing them and then giving them to my neighbors. But it goes into other more serious things too. And to learn that where we are right now, it's enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. There's
Thanks
a power
for bringing us back.
There's a power to that realization. So
there is.
Yeah. And I love the idea of the spaciousness beyond the little dot.
Yes, that's right.
Well, let's delve into today's special topic, shall we? Forgiveness.
Yes.
Now, I understand that your congregation has spent the month of January focusing on that topic. I think that's fascinating. As I said before, it couldn't be more timely. So tell us what led up to this focus.
So yes, we have. We've actually spent a week. It started with a sermon that I gave back in October, and it was about the importance of self-forgiveness and how when we don't forgive ourselves, we don't allow our full selves to be present in a relationship or in a community or in a group, and that anything we're keeping apart, keeping separate, right, from that relationship, even with our own selves, but certainly with other people, we don't allow ourselves to belong. And that self-forgiveness, months ago, that whole conversation was about the importance of forgiving ourselves so we can accept ourselves, so we can bring our full selves into relationship and belong, feel the belonging. And I got so much feedback from people. One person said to me, you could talk about forgiveness for a year. Like, it is such a big topic.
Yeah.
So we did. We took this first month of the year and dove into it from different perspectives. So self-forgiveness, but of course, forgiveness of other people. What is forgiveness? How do you do it? Right? That there's actually a process to it. It's not simply just a magical thinking. The relationship with social justice and forgiveness. Right? How can you be an advocate for peace or what is right or the rights of other people when things are being done that hurt them? How do you reconcile forgiveness with that commitment when you know things are being done that are wrong? So it's a rich topic, very, very many ways to approach it. And the last thing we talked about was when we need to ask for forgiveness and what that's like and how to do that. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like forgiveness branches out and touches upon almost every significant aspect of life.
That's right.
And I'm curious to find out because when you mentioned this as a topic for our show today, I started thinking about, well, what really is forgiveness? What does it mean? Does it mean, oh, it's okay, what you did doesn't matter anymore? It doesn't mean I'm just letting go of what you did and moving on. And I think those are two meanings people often give forgiveness that can create a tremendous amount of turbulence about it.
Absolutely.
So in your discussions with your congregation, did you find a workable definition?
Well, I think that, so that's a very important question. And let me start by just saying that we forgive people. We don't forgive acts, So we'll hear a lot that condoning behavior and forgiveness are not the same. So that if I forgive a human being, giving them for being human, right, which will be flawed, we will be full of fear and falsities in our minds and all that goes on in the human morass, and we will make mistakes, big and small, and so will every other person. And that potential for wrongdoing and selfishness and even evil is inside all of us. So that's, I think, one of the first and most important things is that forgiveness, to me, in many ways, is a lot about acceptance from a place of deep understanding, which doesn't, again, mean that I'm saying what happened was right in any way, shape, or form, but that I have an understanding that allows me to accept. I don't have to like what happened, but I can accept. And there's different levels of forgiveness. I mean, forgiveness can be simply a decision, or it can move to a more emotional level where you actually, there's a word not used a whole lot anyway, as much today, which is mercy.
Yes.
And mercy is when we give someone more than they deserve, if you will, right? So it's actually not only saying that I can make a decision to accept what's happened, but that I actually might be able to find compassion in my heart for you or for myself, or, so there's levels and degrees.
Yeah. I love that word mercy. One of my favorite Shakespeare quotations is from The Merchant of Venice, when Portia says, "The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as a gentle rain from heaven." So it intersects in my mind with the concept of grace.
Yes.
And you make some important distinctions about what forgiveness is and what it isn't. I think that forgiveness is fundamentally something that we do for ourselves can have a positive impact on others by expressing compassion for them. And I don't think it's ever mutually exclusive with protecting ourselves or with holding a clear stance in our own mind and in our hearts that what you did individually or socially is wrong and will always be wrong, and justice should apply. But to me, forgiveness is a sloughing off of negative impacts emotionally from what someone might have done to me or to my group or to us as a society, so that we move past it into a realm where we are fundamentally letting go of carrying the burden of the harm, because the burden of the harm should be on the person who did the harm. That's and ultimately their task in life is to come to understand what they did, to apologize for it. I think apology it's the yang of the yin of forgiveness.
Yes. Yes.
And there is I think it's an underdeveloped skill, in our culture. And people often think that saying, well, if you were offended by what I did, then I'm sorry. That's not an apology. But I think that fundamentally forgiveness is so that I hit the clear button for my soul.
Yes.
So that I can move on.
That's right.
And it's separate from issues that have to do with justice or with holding people accountable. And it is never, as you articulated, it doesn't ever mean saying that what you did was okay.
That's right.
It means that I have hit the clear button and I am ready to move on. And you actually have just gone back burner in my psyche and my soul, which is where you want people who have done terrible things, or have betrayed you to be. And I think it's fair also, they need to then earn, reentry.
Yes.
So does that make sense to you?
So much of what you're saying makes sense. I mean, so you're absolutely right. People will often say to me, so if I forgive, but I can't be in a relationship with them, or I don't want to be in a relationship. Yeah. And those are not, you don't even need, that other person doesn't even need to know that you've forgiven them. It really is for ourselves. And, this concept of joy being an act of resistance, I absolutely believe that, because when we've lost our ability to feel joy, to feel connected, to feel peace, to feel who we are, that totally gives that other person or group of people all the power.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So I'm identifying with what you're saying and saying, yes, it really is for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And when I think about the I'm sorry and the apologies, I actually like the concept of amends, where it isn't words, it's about changing our behavior, or a person changing their behavior. I mean, amends is speaking the truth and then doing what can be done to repair harms and to ensure, to the best of our ability, they don't continue to happen. I mean, the whole truth and reconciliation process. And the words I'm sorry can be not so helpful necessarily. They can be, but they often cannot be so much.
It needs to be genuine. And I think we can tell when it's genuine and when it's PR.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
But, you mentioned earlier when you were talking about forgiveness that it's not an all or nothing. It's not like a switch that you flip on or off, but it's a process. And I was intrigued by that. Could you say a bit more about how you see the process of forgiveness unfolding?
Yes, absolutely. Sure. And that is sort of illuminating for some folks to realize that it isn't just saying, it's not like we just say it and it happens, right? And so one of the most important things, I think, is to recognize, and you're alluding to this, we've been talking about this, what are the harms how are we harmed by living in a state of unforgiveness, right?
Yeah.
And so it's everything from, physically. I mean, there's studies, many studies done that show the health benefits of people who choose forgiveness. So when we live in a state of unforgiveness, we may have increased stress, increased blood pressure, we can't sleep, we're anxious, we don't trust people, we're walking around bitter. There's a lot of even physical, as well as, of course, emotional, spiritual, psychological things that happen. And I think that's actually the first step, is to realize that this is causing harm to me. Living in this place of not forgiving, it's hurting me. Yeah. And then from there, making a conscious decision to say, I'm going to choose to start this process of forgiveness. Not I'm going to choose to forgive and it's magic, but I'm actually going to choose to work toward forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And then there is work. The real deepest work is around the hurts that are there, right? Understanding what they are, resolving them. And there are many different ways to do that with support, whether it be therapists or friends or ministers or meditation, but, grappling with those things that are inside of us around that until we come to a place where we can actually begin to feel something shifting and loosening in us. Yeah. And then ultimately, it's about being able to first not have a negative response to the person or situation. So if you see them in the grocery store, you don't run the other way, or you or cringe when you hear certain topics. And then ultimately that you can come to a place of compassion and maybe even wish that group of people or a person well, have some sympathy. Mm-hmm. So there are these stages that happen. It can take years, or it can happen quite miraculously sometimes, very quickly, but it is a process.
Yeah. What you say reminds me of the work of a psychologist named Kristin Neff, who wrote a book about self-compassion. And she starts from the place of, she says that instead of pursuing self-esteem, which is often based on trying to feel worthy by convincing yourself you've done enough, And
when is that, Mary?
It's often grounded on almost inevitably comparing yourself to other people. Yes. And she says, and she uses a Buddhism as a basis for this. She says, no, that it's much healthier to focus on self-compassion. That if you cultivate that sense of compassion for yourself, that you kind of resolve the issues of self-esteem, because you almost make them irrelevant, because you're coming from a place where you're assuming that you are worthy of your own compassion, mm-hmm. and that can develop a strength and a peace of mind in yourself. And it struck me as perhaps very much akin to what you're saying about among the stages of forgiveness when it applies to self-forgiveness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And others, right?
And others, absolutely.
I had this experience, I'll tell you really quickly, with my mom. My mom and I had a very difficult relationship, and I lived in a state of unforgiveness from pretty much ever with her. And around very, very literally close to her death, it was a few days before she died. She was in the process of dying, and we lived about 4 or 5 hours apart. And I went to say goodbye to her. And I said, Mom, my kids were very young at the time. And I said, Mom, I'll be back. And she looked at me, Mary, and she said, why? And in an instant, the veil fell away from me. Now, this is years of work, right? But I went, oh my God, she doesn't know what it feels like to be loved. And everything changed. Like, how could she have loved? How could she have acted lovingly if she herself had never even known what that felt like? So it's that compassion is so critical, and we can't force it. However, we can till the soil. There are things we can be doing that can help make us open to it.
What a powerful experience! Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, it was. And it's never been the same. I mean, in a good way,
Yeah, no. I mean, it sounds like it was very liberating, and it created, I'm reminded of the word spaciousness.
That's right.
That you were using earlier. So
that's right.
Yeah,
it did.
Well, there was something else I wanted to go back to that you were talking about in the beginning when you mentioned the relationship between forgiveness and social justice. So I wonder what some of your thoughts are about how that connection unfolds.
So, gosh, there's a whole lot of them. I mean, some of my, greatest teachers, of course, Martin Luther King, he wrote about one of the things that I use as a model for myself with this topic, because of course, he believed that forgiveness is a way of being. It's not, what did he say? It's not an occasional act, but it is a way of being.
Yeah.
So he talked about the need to have a strong mind, right? A tough mind and a tender heart. And I think when we think about things around social justice, both of those are needed. We need to have that mind that can see truth, that can actually, you know, whether it's sifting through fake news and real news, or but really even hear the truths that are hard for ourselves to hear as we recognize our own, you know, part in things, even when we didn't realize it, for example, with racism, as white people. And yet to have the tender heart so the compassion can be there for the other people. So to me, it is about recognizing the truth of things that have happened or are happening, working for what we believe is right and fair and just, and still cultivating that open heart to be able to see the other human beings as people and not the them over there, but actually people that have stories, that have reasons that are under their behaviors. And then to make amends. I mean, you know, reparations, amends. We had a very powerful experience happen when on Martin Luther King Sunday, we had Frank Cousins, who lives in town and his family has for a long time, come and tell the story of his dad, who in the early 1940s was a graduate of Newburyport High School and was told he could process in line with everyone else. However, he needed to go to the end of the line. He couldn't go alphabetically with the C's. And that the middle school in town is named after that principle.
Yeah.
So conversations arose, not about demonizing that principle in any way, but also saying we can be compassionate, that was perhaps a mistake or a time when people didn't realize things, and the action was wrong. And so are we going to continue to live with looking at, you know, a falsity, right? By honoring someone, literally naming our school that educates where education occurs after that kind of thing. So separating again, the person from the act is really important.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well put. What an interesting story as well. Well, you know, so much to think about, and clearly forgiveness touches upon everything, all of our lives. I believe you had mentioned to me earlier that as part of your congregation's work, there are certain kind of practices regarding forgiveness that can kind of nudge the process along, so to speak. I wonder if you could describe some of those forgiveness practices that our listeners and watchers might be interested in hearing about.
Absolutely. So, well, we did metta, which is loving kindness and sending loving kindness, starting, of course, with ourselves and then someone that we love, you know, where it's a little easier. One of the Buddhist practices that I have found really, really helpful, quite liberating actually, is something called Tonglen. Are you familiar? Have you?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've tried it. It's hard, but good. But good.
It is good. I mean, can we just take a second, Mary?
Let's absolutely. I think that would be great. Let's
do that. Let's just take a second, and I invite all of our listeners to do so. If you're driving, maybe wait till you're not. But yeah, so just take a moment and take a deep breath into your stomach and feeling yourself fully here in this moment, present. And the practice of Tonglen is a little counterintuitive. We're actually going to breathe in difficult feelings, things we typically might resist or push away. So start maybe with a feeling that you've had recently, or think of a relationship or a situation that brings up an unpleasant feeling for you, something that is unforgiven, anger or fear or resentment. And remembering that situation, just breathe that feeling deeply into yourself. And as you exhale, breathe out peace, breathe out spaciousness and forgiveness. Again, breathe in the anger, the resentment, and breathe out acceptance, spaciousness, and peace. Breathing in again the feelings that we resist of anger, being betrayed, and exhaling peace, acceptance, spaciousness. And now bring to your mind's eye that person or people that are connected to that incident and that feeling, realizing that they too hold difficult feelings. Imagine what they were feeling or might be feeling: fear, self-righteousness, anger, and breathe in their feelings. Breathe them deep into yourself. And breathe out for those people all that you wish: peace, compassion, spaciousness. Again, breathing in what you see in their actions as angry, fearful, blaming. And breathe out what you wish: peace, acceptance, kindness. We'll try one more time, breathing in that betrayal and anger that you see in their eyes. And breathing out compassion, surrender, and acceptance. Now just take a moment and take a few breaths into your belly just for yourself, to bring yourself fully back here and to thank yourself for being willing to trying something new.
Well, that was calming.
Yeah.
Transform your mind, transform the world you live in. So
Yes.
there's real power to that. Thank you for that, Reverend Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
You bet. Well, what a rich conversation about forgiveness. Thank you for suggesting the topic, and thank you for sharing yours and your congregation's wisdom on the topic.
Yeah. Can I share our quote, Mary, for the month?
Please do. Absolutely.
Here's our challenge.
Okay.
So Reinhold Niebuhr said, "Therefore we are saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness."
All right. Yeah, excellent. Lots to think about there. Yeah. Thank you for that. Well, let's end with a couple of quick positive developments. First one, in honor of Black History Month, which we just entered today. The Biden administration has announced that Harriet Tubman is, after all, going to grace the $20 bill. After earlier moves to honor her in this way were slow-walked by the former Treasury Secretary. Ms. Tubman, as everybody I hope knows, was a significant voice for women's rights, for women's right to vote. And initially, her appearance on the $20 bill was supposed to coincide in 2020 with the anniversary of the 19th Amendment, giving us at long last the right to vote. But she's also known, of course, for being an operative on the Underground Railroad during the Civil War, known as the Moses to African Americans. She was a courageous and just brilliant operative on the Underground Railroad, continually risking her own life and recapture to bring family and friends to freedom. She also served as a scout for the Union Army and was the first woman ever to lead an Army raid. So to me, it seems long overdue to honor her, as we do people who appear on our currency, as a foundational figure in the history of our democracy, because she helped bring life and truth to the concept of a government of, for, and by the people, all the people.
All the people.
All the people. And so one other positive, this is on a totally different level. It's a little whimsical, but everybody's heard about the Bernie meme from the inauguration. But there's a follow-up to the Bernie meme. We've all seen the iconic mega mittens and everything from Edward Hopper's Nighthawks to sitting on a bench with Forrest Gump to appearing with the vampires of Twilight and so forth. Some of them quite hysterically funny. But in addition to injecting some much needed humor into these turbulent times, the Bernie meme has also injected some much needed cash into charities, thanks to the senator himself, who quickly added the image to a line of merchandise on his website, all benefiting Vermont-based charities from Meals on Wheels to senior citizen advocacy groups. And so far, more than $2 million has been raised by that silly Bernie meme. So this is a good thing. And Jen Ellis, the school teacher who made those giant mittens that we're all envying for Bernie, she set up her own philanthropic website called, you'll love this, Generosity Brings Joy. And she's collaborating with businesses to design and create Bernie mitten themed products to benefit charity. So there you have it.
I love that story. And I just have to say, I think that's an example of living in a state of forgiveness. I don't know Bernie and what he felt. He could have gotten really angry and been really bitter, right? And instead, both of them turned this to good. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. It is. And we needed the humor.
Yes, that's right.
Well, Reverend Rebecca, that's it for today. So thank you so much. Great to
be together as always.
Wonderful to share your wisdom. Please join us for our next new episode, which will take place on the second Saturday of March, then the 13th. And imagine that, it will almost be spring by then.
Wow.
So everybody, your questions and or your discussion topics are always welcome to be included. Please email them to spiritmattersnewburyport@gmail.com. Your name can be kept confidential if you prefer. After broadcast, Spirit Matters will replay on Channel 8 at 1 p.m. on Mondays, and again on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. It'll also be available on Port Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. Just click on the YouTube icon and look on playlist for Spirit Matters. You'll also find it on the SoundCloud. Just go to ncmhub.org and click on the cloud icon and scroll down. It's also available on demand at ncmhub.org/share. Click on Channel 8 or Channel 9 and then video on demand. So that's it, everybody. We'll see you at the next Spirit Matters. Bye, Reverend Rebecca. Thank you so much.
Bye, Mary. Thanks, everyone. Have a great month.
Bye-bye.